Cracking concrete, why your worst day might be your best asset. Welcome back to the Soft Girl Era podcast, where we uplift Black professionals, business leaders, and entrepreneurs shining in their purpose. I'm your host, Leanne Dolce, pronounced Dolce, like sweet softness whispered in French, and today I'm beyond thrilled to introduce you to someone extraordinary. Sherell Tyler is not just an entrepreneur or community activist or nonprofit leader. Sherell Tyler is a living, breathing testament to what happens when a Black woman decides that the very things meant to destroy her will become the foundation of her empire. Sherell came from a small town where the statistics of failure are staggering, where motivation is scarce, where getting stuck in survival mode is the norm. But Sherell is the rose that grew from concrete. And through our conversation, Sherell reminded me, and I hope will remind you, that trauma is not your terminus. It is your launch pad. Sherell is changing the world one connection at a time, one boundary at a time, one act of resilience at a time. And her story is the kind of blueprint we all need to see. Let me be clear. This is not one of those conversations where I'm going to tell you to just think positive and manifest your way out of generational pain. No. This is about the raw, unfiltered truth that Sherell Tyler shared with me. A truth that so many Black women, especially those of us who have been grinding in survival mode for decades, need to hear. This is about how childhood trauma, motherhood burdens, systemic oppression, and the weight of carrying entire communities on your back can actually become the very fuel that catapults you into entrepreneurship, activism, and a life where you connect with people like nobody's business. Sherell's message is simple but seismic. The challenges and adversity of being a mother and a Black woman stepping into business, surviving childhood traumas, and not just overcoming them, but coming out victorious, shining, and resilient. Those very things that should have stopped you, killed you, deterred you, or broke you can actually become your greatest assets. And I want to spend the next several minutes unpacking that because if you are listening to this and you have ever felt like your past disqualifies you from your future, I need you to lean in close. I need you to hear this with every fiber of your being. Here are the three most important things I want you to walk away with today. First, trauma is not your terminus, it is your launch pad. Those childhood scars, those motherhood hurdles, those moments when you thought you couldn't take one more step. They build unbreakable resilience when you reframe them as fuel. Second, Black women, we are built for the boardroom and the block. Balancing business, babies, and battles does not diminish you. It multiplies your impact as entrepreneurs and activists. And third, victory looks like shining unapologetically, rising above small town statistics, claiming your nonprofit throne, becoming the people person who changes lives because you have already done it. You have already survived what was supposed to kill you. You are already victorious. Now, I know some of you are sitting there thinking that sounds nice, but how? How do I turn my trauma into a launch pad? How do I stop feeling like I'm drowning and start feeling like I'm building? Let me show you. Let me introduce you to three women who did exactly what Sherell Tyler has done. Three Black women who took their trauma, their motherhood struggles, their adversity, and turned it into empire. And I'm not talking about fairy tales. I'm talking about real women who scrubbed floors, who were told no 1,000 times, who buried loved ones, who faced down racism and sexism and poverty, and who decided that the concrete was not going to crush them. They were going to crack it open and plant their own gardens. First, let me tell you about a woman born Sarah Breedlove in 1867, Louisiana. Her parents were formerly enslaved. She was orphaned young, married at 14, widowed at 20 with a daughter to raise. She suffered hair loss from the stress and trauma of her life, and she was living in the Jim Crow South, facing racial oppression and grinding poverty. She worked as a washerwoman, scrubbing clothes to survive, her hands raw, her back bent, her future seemingly sealed. But here is what she did: she turned her personal scalp trauma into innovation. She created homemade hair care remedies and started selling them door to door. She scaled that into a factory. She trained sales agents, mostly Black women, and built a network of over 40,000 agents. She became the first self made female millionaire in America, amassing a fortune equivalent to over $40 million today. She built lavish mansions, hosted gatherings for the Black elite, and funded anti lynching campaigns. She revolutionized Black hair care and uplifted entire Black communities economically and socially. Madam C.J. Walker was a Black mother who survived trauma and poverty, and she catapulted herself into business success and activism. That is the blueprint. That is what happens when you refuse to let the concrete win. Second, let me tell you about a woman born in 1958 in the New York City projects to a Panamanian immigrant mother. She grew up in poverty on the Lower East Side in an environment where the failure rate was sky high. She faced racial and gender bias in corporate America. She was balancing executive demands with motherhood, dealing with imposter syndrome that came from urban trauma, from being told she didn't belong, from being the only Black woman in rooms full of people who looked nothing like her. But she did not let that stop her. She found mentors inside Xerox. She relentlessly built her skills, earning an engineering degree. She channeled what she calls her project grit into innovation and corporate turnarounds. And she became the first Black woman CEO of a Fortune 500 company, leading Xerox to over $22 billion in revenue. She orchestrated a $6.4 billion acquisition, shattered glass ceilings, and mentored countless Black women leaders. Ursula Burns proved that small town project resilience scales globally. She is a Black mother from a high failure environment who overcame trauma and adversity to become a leader and entrepreneur. That is the blueprint. That is what happens when you take the grit from the streets and turn it into gold in the boardroom. Third, let me tell you about a woman born in Brooklyn in the 1960s. She survived childhood molestation trauma. She was a single mother in urban New York City with no business experience. Investors rejected her because of race and gender, biases. She heard no so many times that no became background noise. But she started in her kitchen with her husband. She leveraged her personal trauma inspired formulas to create natural hair care products. She sold them at grassroots community events, building an authentic brand through storytelling and connection. She grew her company from $1 million to over $75 million in revenue, and then sold it to a global beauty giant for over $100 million. She transformed a kitchen hobby into a retail empire stocked in major stores across the country. She revolutionized inclusive beauty, created jobs for Black communities, and inspired activism in hair health and representation. Lisa Price, founder of Carol's Daughter, is a Black mother who survived trauma, motherhood hurdles, and business challenges, and she catapulted herself into entrepreneurship and community impact. That is the blueprint. That is what happens when you decide that your pain will not be wasted. Do you see the pattern? Madam C.J. Walker, Ursula Burns, Lisa Price, and Sherell Tyler, these are not women who had it easy. These are not women who were handed opportunities. These are women who took the concrete that was supposed to crush them and cracked it open to plant their own gardens. And that is what I want you to understand today. Your trauma, your adversity, your motherhood struggles, they are not disqualifications. They are your credentials. They are the very things that make you uniquely qualified to build something extraordinary. But here's where it gets real. Here is where we move from inspiration to activation. Because it is one thing to hear these stories and feel inspired for a moment, it is another thing entirely to take that inspiration and turn it into action. So here's your challenge. I want you to audit one trauma scar this week, just one. What is something that should have broken you? What is something that you have been carrying around like a weight, like a shame, like a secret? I want you to journal about it. I want you to ask yourself, how can this thing that was meant to destroy me actually catapult my next business move, my next activist step, my next meaningful connection with another human being? Write it down, sit with it. And then if you are feeling brave, share it. Tag the Soft Girl Era podcast. Tag Sherell Tyler. Let us see those roses blooming through the concrete. Because here's the truth that Sherell Tyler reminded me of in our conversation: softness is not weakness, vulnerability is not fragility. When you have survived what we have survived, when you have carried what we have carried, choosing to be soft, choosing to be vulnerable, choosing to rest and set boundaries and say no without guilt, that is not weakness. That is power. That is revolution. That is you reclaiming your life. That is you saying, I have been strong for too long, and now I am going to be whole. I have been grinding for too long, and now I am going to be grounded. I have been carrying everyone else for too long, and now I am going to carry myself with the same care, the same love, the same fierce protection. And I know some of you are thinking, but I am tired. I have been strong for so long. I have been the one holding everyone else up. I have been the one sacrificing, the one showing up, the one carrying the cape. And now you are telling me to turn my trauma into a business, to become an activist, to connect with people. I am exhausted. And to that, I say, I hear you. I see you. And that is exactly why this message matters. Because what Sherell Tyler is showing us, what Madam C.J. Walker and Ursula Burns and Lisa Price showed us, is that you do not have to keep carrying the weight the same way. You can transform it, you can alchemize it, you can take that pain and turn it into purpose, not because you have to prove anything to anyone, but because you deserve to see your suffering mean something. You deserve to see your story become a source of strength, not just for you, but for every other Black woman who comes after you. This is not about adding more to your plate. This is about reframing what is already on your plate. This is about looking at your story and saying, what if this is not my shame? What if this is my superpower? What if the very thing that was supposed to stop me is actually the thing that makes me unstoppable? What if my worst day is actually my best asset? And let me tell you what I want you to feel right now. I want you to feel empowered. I want you to feel seen. I want you to feel fiercely hopeful. I want you to look at Sherell Tyler's story, at Madam CJ Walker's story, at Ursula Burns' story, at Lisa Price's story. And I want you to say, if she rose from concrete, so can I. I want that victorious shine to radiate through your screen, through your headphones, through your heart. I want you to know that you are not broken. You are breaking through. Because here's what happens when we stop seeing our trauma as a liability and start seeing it as an asset. We stop apologizing for taking up space. We stop shrinking to make other people comfortable. We stop waiting for permission to build the life we deserve. We start businesses, we launch nonprofits, we become activists, we connect with people in ways that change lives, including our own. We become the rose that grew from concrete. And then we go back and we crack open more concrete so that other roses can grow too. That is what Sherell Tyler's doing. That is what this soft girl era is all about. It is not about being delicate. It is not about being passive. It is about being intentional. It is about choosing softness as an act of resistance in a world that taught us survival. It is about saying, I have been strong for too long, and now I am going to be whole. I have been grinding for too long, and now I am going to be grounded. I have been carrying everyone else for too long, and now I am going to carry myself with the same care, the same love, the same fierce protection. So here's my call to action for you today. I want you to stop right now and think about one thing that you have been carrying that you need to put down. One belief that you have been holding on to that no longer serves you. One story that you have been telling yourself about why you can't, why you shouldn't, why you're not ready. I want you to write it down. I want you to look at it. And then I want you to ask yourself, what would happen if I let this go? What would happen if I decided that my trauma is not my terminus, but my launch pad? What would happen if I decided that I am built for the boardroom and the block? What would happen if I decided that victory looks like shining unapologetically? And then I want you to take one action, just one. It could be starting that business you have been dreaming about. It could be setting a boundary with someone who has been draining your energy. It could be reaching out to one person and telling them your story. It could be investing in yourself, in your healing, in your growth. It could be saying no without guilt. It could be saying yes without fear. Whatever it is, I want you to do it. I want you to crack open the concrete and plant your seed because the world needs you. The world needs your story. The world needs your resilience. The world needs your voice. The world needs you to stop playing small and start shining unapologetically. The world needs you to stop waiting for permission and start building your empire. The world needs you to stop seeing your trauma as a liability and start seeing it as your greatest asset. You are not alone. Your story matters. Your pain has purpose. And the very thing that was meant to destroy you can become the foundation of your empire. You do not have to have it all figured out. You do not have to be perfect. You just have to be willing to crack open the concrete and plant your seed. You just have to be willing to say, I am the rose that grew from concrete and I am going to bloom.